Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. We are in a 3-day program. Today is our final day on the whole domain of intentional change. As we look at the world around us, we see dysfunctional systems. We see ecological turbulence. We see governmental incompetence. And we all know that the system needs to be radically transformed. But how to do it, in what sequence and with what priorities, is a challenge that I don't think anyone really knows how to answer. So we probe intentional change in a spirit of truth pursued more than truth possessed. And I think that's very important as we contemplate the complexity of our world, the kind of solutions that we know are possible, but how we integrate them into dysfunctional systems is an art form that is elusive to almost everybody. But change we must. No one less than Sir David King, one of the most eminent climate scientists in the world, says we have about 3 to 4 years to turn things around. So this program on intentional change is in that spirit of how do we synergize our efforts, our visions, our actions, our partnerships, our networks in such a way within a diminishing time frame that we can be the causative proximation for the kind of change that we seek. So this is our third and final program, but we're going to be continuing this inquiry in this program into the new year because it's of fundamental importance to Humanity Rising as we move into the 18th month of the pandemic. We started in May of 2020. We said that we would continue for as long as the pandemic unfolded, thinking it would probably be over by the summer or the fall. And here we are at the end of 2021. And we're now immersed in Omicron with a pandemic that does not seem to want to go away. And all the king's men and all the king's horses, with all the vaccinations and the protocols and the lockdowns and the face masks and the social distancing, haven't been able to deal with a little tiny virus. That gives you a measure of the complexity of our world and the intractability of the systems that are in place and the presence of Gaia and her intention surrounding us. And in the middle of all this, we humans have got to engage in the most fundamental transformation in our entire history as a species in a very short period of time. That's the challenge before the human race at the end of 2021. So thank you for joining today. Before we launch into our program, let us pause, as we always do, and just center ourselves in our bodies. Take a breath, close your eyes, and just for a minute, attune yourself to your heart. Listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and deep thanksgiving. You're alive. We're all alive at this most extraordinary moment in the human journey. Thank you, everyone. In case you don't know, that's the voice of Ruth Cunningham. She sang for many years with the Anonymous Four. She graces us every year in Chartres when we go to that deep, sacred place where we convene our mystery school. So thank you, Ruth, for bringing the music of the mother to us today as we conclude our session on intentional change. I'd like to now welcome back Joy Gilfilen, who's been convening our programs. Joy, thank you so much for everything you've done to put this program together. And I turn the program over to you.
I am so excited to be bringing in this third day and the subjects that we have to move forward. It's freezing in Bellingham today, and I find it interesting because it was flooding before that. So we're going to be talking a lot about water and the flow of water through time, and it's always useful to look out at the earth and notice that Ian is drinking water even as we're talking about water in the air and water frozen. So in the past 3 days, what we've done is we've started a journey of introducing intentional change concepts to us as leaders in the different groups and circles of influence that we have around the world. Day one was about revealing humanity's deep cellular betrayal. And that was an introduction of the first few principles of the intentional change philosophies that I've developed over the last 60 years of studying humans. Not humanity as a group, it was studying humans and nature. And we're going to, yesterday, we got to listen to a juggler and amazing man who's done a lot of deep research into decades and tens of thousands of years of history from a very culturally diverse place. He was juggling history, language, and experience, and it left us in a really interesting spot where we're actually getting close to putting our finger on the nugget of issues that make us upset. And it's about working through that cellular betrayal and that betrayal and those conflicts that move us into a new place, which is about creating powerful synergy towards energetic revitalization. And with that, we're going to bring on Ian Lewis, who's going to be speaking to that subject from a very profound place of being a person working on the global stage to create change. So Ian, do you want to introduce yourself just briefly to the audience before I go into a summary of what we did yesterday? Or not yesterday, but over the last couple of days?
That's very nice of you, Joy. Thank you. Yes, I've spoken the last 2 days. Hope people are not getting too tired of my information. I'm not too used to speaking. I'm normally a doer. And my world is about making things happen. I run Life College. I created it about 45 years ago, and its aim is to find places and people and energy that need an adjustment. The people have got ideas. We specialize in leadership development. So we rather broadly say we lead leaders, we lead leadership, we help self-leadership, and if it's got leaders or leadership in it, then we're probably there somewhere. One of the nice things about leadership is that it's always adventurous. By definition, you're always on the front of the wave. Otherwise, you're definitely not leading. And that nice place that I belong, because I really do enjoy being in that place where energy is flowing.
Boy, can I endorse and support that. So today's conversation, we're going to go out there on the outer reaches a little bit, but let's step back for a second and recapture very quickly what we did over the last couple days, just to keep us on the same course moving forward. And I want to say that these are the intentional change series. This is what we did, what we were talking about. We talked about the kaleidoscope of many of us have different perspectives and ways of seeing the world. And then if you step way out into the universe, you may see it this way. And if you step down into the earth, you may see it this way. And if you actually step really down deep, you may see a completely different reality. It's typically in the dark. But the process of that is incredibly important. One of the, oh, hold on here. one of the slides that we finished on, and I'm going to come back to this over and over again, is how do we look at the future? In order to look at the future with passion, joy, and excitement, and enthusiasm and adventure, it's often useful to step on the ground of what came past. So looking at values, which is one of the things that Ian talks about and Kurt talked about. By the way, we'll bring Kurt back on at the end of the session today to give us some reflection on what he's gotten out of this 3 days. But thinking about the past, what are the values and what is the construct that comes from our elders, from ourselves, from our own knowingness about who we are as a species? And that's one of the most important subjects when we're talking about the destruction of the future. So if we can build off the past, go through the present, and look into the future with hopefulness, joy, and anticipation, we can go backwards and find our way through it. So that was one of the conversations we had. The next one. What are we looking at? Are you looking at the major screen?
I don't know what you're doing there, Joy.
Okay, so I didn't share the right screen, sorry.
No, yeah, I was trying to figure that out myself.
Okay, hold on. Thank you. I'll back up. I'll back up the slide because it's very simple.
Let me confirm that. Yeah, you're good. Go ahead, Joy.
Okay. So that was the summary of the first 3 days that we've had, or the first 2 coming into today. And this kaleidoscope is quite a wild ride, but it really does give an idea of where we're at in the 21st century. So this is the values to vision model. Stepping back through time, you can look at where you're at going into the future. And it's a technique I use. It's called quantum leaping. Revealing humanity's deep cellular betrayal is the conversation we've been. So why, if we're so magnificent, why do we underperform as a species? That's a big question. And it's one we're going to continue over the next few months or period of time. We also talked about the fact that we have an unprecedented opportunity to quantum leap into the future, because today we understand energy and motion. And we understand, because of all the deep research and the science and the brilliance of so many people who have been seeking to figure out how do we do things in the future that actually can change our results. Because as Ian talks about, it's about doing. It's not, I mean, we've got so much thinking and we've got so much knowledge now. It's really about doing and getting into the future. So this energy can work backwards to be destructive, or it can work forwards to be constructive. Our goal is to move into constructive behavior. One of the models that I talked about is that there's this growth model. We all are learners. We grow. And the thing that's exceptional about humans is that we grow fast and we learn from our risking and our growth. So there's a pattern to learning forwards. And also when we get stuck in a particular place, we can actually degenerate and go backwards. And so we want to find and become leaders who lead with courage, confidence, and adventure. And like Ian has said, life is a daring adventure and nothing. What's the point? This is one of the models that I developed because I was working with so many youth at the turn of the century, and right as 9/11 happened, when Y2K came through, when the youth and were dealing with mass downloads of media and traumatic images that were coming through in young brains. They were being programmed by a lot of fear stories. And so I developed this to help the teenagers and the young men who were going off to college, who I was coaching a lot because I have 2 sons that are now in their 30s. But at that time, I was working with the adults and the teens and sitting in gymnasiums for sometimes 40 hours in a week. It was extraordinary. And I learned how much we get hooked into this fear triangle, what we need to do to stay centered in our own bodies, and then how we can move into leadership. And I realized that we were very, very weak in teaching our teenagers, because our adults were off course. We were scared because the world had just changed big time. So it was important to develop a model for leadership. My son actually challenged me to it. He said, Mom, he says, you talk so much, draw me a picture. Okay, just draw me a picture so I can get through it and make a decision. So it took me 30 days, 19 different disciplines. I finally developed this model to help guide us out. And it's this particular model that has helped me move into the world of law enforcement. And then I took that model and I turned it into this intentional change model. So I could diagram the past and the fear-based side. This is what we've got. This one is where are we right now and what are the resources we can use to pull us into the future. And then this model is all about what's new and what's emerging and what is out there that we can pull in that we haven't seen before because we're busy over here. So Ian is one of those delightful people who is an emerging friend in my world. And I have been so thrilled to see the amount of resources that he brings to the table that I didn't know existed, and the amount of knowledge. And it's the same thing as Kurt and Jim. You guys are bringing massive resources to the table. The question is, what are we going to do with them? So with that, I'd like to continue this conversation of why do we underperform? And better than that now, how can we outperform ourselves as a species? How can we upscale the next level and go somewhere bigger and stronger? Not bigger as in dominative. I mean, bigger as a soul, bigger as a heart, bigger as people who are leading change in the world today. So Ian, you're up.
Thank you very much, Joy. You've got the perfect name, haven't you?
Not my fault. My mom did it.
Hey. I understand that my name stands for John, some sort of powerful warrior or something. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. Okay, so what we are into with intentional change is a model that takes us forward from where we are to the future. And it would be terribly appropriate for me to say that as far as the environment is concerned, it might be right to say that we're actually after midnight and we need to be yesterday. It's always argued by so many people, but I think the evidence is proving that if we'd taken action yesterday, it would have been sensible. Other things, well, it's probably yesterday and we need to be tomorrow. And what I would like to do is cover a few areas that relate in some way to that. My love of America is terrific. It wasn't always, but I like that I've traveled upstate in New York and I came across a beautiful statue of a 5-foot lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, and First Lady of the Globe, which is quite an epitaph. And she came along, and amongst her many quotes, one I really like is, average people, they talk about things. Small people talk about people. Great people talk about ideas. But the greatest people, and this is my little addendum, the greatest people do. Now, I'd like to swap to a short PowerPoint just to engage in some new areas here. So let's see if I can share the screen appropriately today. There we should have a few dimensions. So you'll recall, I like to take a moment. I like to take this moment just to focus. And it's that degree of focus on intention which keeps us guided on our path towards some outcome or intention or wish or dream, some achievement. And once we have taken that moment to focus, we can then expand to a great place, and we collect our energies from the universal all. And then, of course, we begin to look at that place of intention, where we take stuff to the small place that it needs to be, and intention to the great place that it needs to be. For we know that energy flows where intention goes, and that is how we achieve things. So we mentioned that if you're out in a place where you really do need to focus your energy, whether that's on a stage, whether that's achieving a great artisan painting or piece of furniture or great song, whatever it is, we are talking about the focus, the terrific focus of energy that is required in order to achieve that thing. Humanity Rising, I'm pleased to say, is really putting some polish on the achievements of humanity. And that is certainly what humanity needs. So we're gathering our energy. We're looking at where it is that we're collecting it and where it is we're taking it. And we're standing on a very firm place in order to gather and in order to generate, to emanate our energies into the outcome that we seek. And we've covered that place, that is our need for survival, our step up to our need for comfort, at least shelter, and some warmth in some latitudes at least. And then we come to a greed and want area that has perhaps got humanity into a rather difficult corner that it's desperate to get itself out of now. Moving to human need, family, friendships, relationships, moving up to global, into the cosmic of all nature and life, on to the all connectedness of everything, oneness and part of universal energy, and then stepping off from that place into allness, where one is universal energy. Now, in that place, we need the values and ethics to stand firmly upon in order to make this grounded earth happen for all that it is possible to make it stand for. So we go back again to the further reaches of human nature and their life college, where we work purely with leadership, sits on 16 little areas. Many people will have fewer, many people will have more. And I love your phrase, Jim, truth pursued rather than truth achieved. But what we are into is discussions about all sorts of different models that work from all our places of understanding. Now, I didn't want to expand on this because I covered it in an earlier talk, and I really wanted just to say that each of these subdivides into separate sub areas, each of which is an aspect of the further reaches of human nature. And if you wanted to go to the Life College site, you'd find them all available and in some detail, because each one is written about as a paragraph and expanded substantially. I chose to give some examples of some doing insofar as Choose, Change, Become works with collaborations of great impact, and that has been with United Nations and so on. But the Global Youth Council is the real energy behind it. It's young people doing amazing things, identified in 80 countries, but over 1 million young people involved now, and it's been going for 20 years. It is dramatic, and they've evolved it even further, and I cannot tell you where it's gone now, because people have taken on their own leadership of this. Campaign for Adventure started 20 years ago, decided that the UK was not being its usual adventurous self, so we took the collaboration into some interesting places, and we made things happen, whether through industry, through the judicial system, through the parliament, funders, through the education system, and so on. And a local area, Apuseni Mountains, some thought the joke about not finding many sharp teeth amongst the Transylvanian mountains was quite funny, but it certainly was Transylvania. And there we worked with sustainability, working with woods and the environment. And there in the bottom left, we talked about the most totally sustainable building you could imagine, which is an ice church built from the river alongside that cabin. And certainly it doesn't damage the environment very much. So back to intention. If you choose a lot of stuff, you'll get little intention. If you choose a single focus, you will get a lot of intention. Now, it is true that that is a dimension of intention. But here's some more. We're talking here about the most important one, which is self-leadership. It is about leading. It's about leadership. It's about leading leaders. And it's about leading leadership. That's quite a mouthful. And again, a useful exposition is available on the Life College site. We're talking about passion, probably the second most, if not the foremost requirement for intention. Now, passions are manifold. Passions can be anger, they can be love, they can be agape, they can be not agape, they can be a beautiful area, which is the presence of heart in all one does, and they can be joy and happiness and fulfillment and purpose and so on. What I want to say about passion is that the skill of intentional change is about directing, redirecting, and managing passions. For without management, they can go awry. There is nothing worse in humanity's existence than passions, especially those that may be negative, going awry. So one of the dimensions that I recommend mastering in terms of intention is passion redirecting and passion management. A further area that I really strongly recommend managing well, acquiring, is that skill of managing one's health. Health will tell you whether you're on target for your intentional change objectives. If you're off target, your health will suffer. If you have not got health around you, have another look at where it is your life energies are being directed. Have a look at whether it is you. Try always with health to use the I, oneself, the true I of self, because that is where all your energy will come from. And that is the I that develops to the universal energy of the universe. And of course, then we have the last one, knowing there is always more to the simple slides that someone shows. And there, I can guarantee I've only touched the surface. Let me quickly cover an area which we are concerned in a big way about. Fear. So many fear that they are not enough. In fact, more common is that they are more than the fear they are used to feeling. They are much more than they feel themselves to be. and it is the fear of finding out which must be overcome. The only cure to that fear is to try, to test, to practice, and through that, to know. I want now to move into the practical side because that is where I flourish. I want to talk a little bit about the Summer Camps Trust. I am lucky enough to have been offered the chair role in their board, and I'm active amongst their teachings and trainings. We are really unfortunate in the UK because we don't have the history, the culture of summer camps that happen across the pond and in many other countries, I have to say. Across the eastern part of Europe, we have wonderful camps in Russia, the Balkan states, Germany, Austria, France, just fantastic. What happened in UK, for all good reasons, was that we set up amazing summer camps in the 30s. They had come through from the turn of the 19th century, 20th century, when we had the Scouts and Guides development happening. And when the Second World War broke out, it meant that all our camps had to be gifted to the immigrants, the migrations and the protection of all the people that came under pressure in Europe. And in 1937, we had to gift them over, and they were still looking after immigrants and people who needed help in the 60s. So we never got back to that place. But suffice to say that we never lost our opportunity. What we actually did was to take another route to where it was we needed to be. And our route was to go to, just let me get the right slide on here, to go to summer camps in the UK. And here, just a short few pictures about what we do now with just 2% of our young people. Enriching people's lives is our objective, and we mainly deliver the training that is required to ensure these events continue. We will catch up. Our target is simply to double to 4%. But of course, we are talking about 250,000 people there, our young lives being enriched. The point that I am making here is that we want our evolution of summer camps to go on in a big way. And my work is about corralling the energy towards summer camps and making sure just simply fantastic, utterly fantastic stuff happens. The next area that I want to talk about is the World Citation Alliance. Now, funnily enough, someone gave me a great opportunity to work with the World Citation Alliance, and now I also work with these wonderful people around the globe. Now, I hope to show you another short clip as I hand back to Joy, but for the time being, you just need to know that amongst the many things we do, we have projects that are World Heritage Sites, dolphin projects, responsible whale watchers, protecting whales, and from ships, protecting whales from ship strikes. You'll know that every boat that goes across the ocean hits whales. and they crucify them. You'll rarely see a whale that hasn't got a scar on its back. So if I go into, for instance, whale heritage sites, you will see, I really know this site, that our world becomes a lot smaller, and we act to protect whales on specific sites around the globe. Whale heritage sites protect not only the seas, but the land and the education systems and the economic systems in the areas that we've been able to run them. We've got terrific support, and the name Jean-Michel Cousteau will come to mind. We've got so many sites, and here I'll just quickly cover that this is the globe, and there you'll see plenty on Pacific coast and the Atlantic coast, and in the middle of the Pacific around Hawaii and so on. You're well catered for in the US. We are well catered for in South America. We're well catered for in Europe, and we're also well catered for across in the Far East and around Australia. The point I want you to take from these slides is the simple one that intention has driven all of that work, all of those millions of people across our amazing globe. I just want to pause for a second whilst we think about the amount of intention that is required to achieve the energy that an individual worker has to put into the Summer Camps Trust, and the energy that is required to run a global change organization. I'm going to finish with a simple statement. For everything to do with intentional change, one has to plan, but then one has to do.
So true.
Over to you, Joy.
You know, if you don't do, you don't get anywhere. I mean, doing gets you results. And you know what? The fact is, not doing also gets you results. You get unintended consequences, you get intended consequences, you get unanticipated. There are always consequences because everything in the world is moving. I mean, we started out talking a little bit about the spirals of nature and the spirals in our body and the spiral. I mean, we got so much going on in the world that we block it out because we can't even think about it because it's too much. And our world, one of the things that came up in today's after chat was, you know, this seems like it's very privileged or up level conversation. But you know what? Everything that goes up level conversation in the change model, when we're going from courage to eldership to leadership, or from courage to leadership, or activism to leadership to eldershipping and on up the ladder, the way our world has been structured in some of these hierarchical places where the money and the flow and the focus is on controlling and containing. And what happens, I built a model, and I don't have it on here, it'll come up in another chart, where you have an overcast system that controls certain things from the top. But if, when you're talking about change, you ignore that those people also are striving to achieve change and make differences, you ignore one of the greatest resources. We oftentimes talk about those rich 1%. And if we don't go up and talk to them and engage with them about the things we learn at the bottom 99%, we can't build the space in between. And that's part of what intentional change leadership is about. That's what we're working on. And I know, Ian, I want to throw it back to you just for a minute. I don't know about throw it. I want to bat it back to you just for a second. Can you please speak about the quality of people who are at the high end of the game, who are really working on focusing on and helping to fund and helping to invest in right action stuff? Frankly, I was blown away at your list of all the people working on the World Citation Institute. Okay, for me, I've been living in a little tiny bubble here in Western Washington where we have the Salish Sea Reservation Initiative that's linking the Nooksacks and the Lemmies and these people trying to save the ocean here because we got herring beds. And that we're affected directly by what's happening in Fukushima and what's happening in Japan and what happened in Hiroshima or whatever, however you want to say that. And the South Sea Islands and the whales and the dolphins and all the stuff. And it feels like, oh my God, and you just blew my mind open that there is so much movement happening. It's sort of like talking to the guy that wrote the Blessed Unrest book and realizing that while we focus on all the ain't it awfuls, we're not paying enough attention to all the ain't it awesomes. So can you speak to that for a minute, Ian, from your experience?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to talk about how to gain support. I just think that I've probably got a slide that might help understand this. But I think that a fear that exists for a lot of people, a lot of activists, a lot of people who feel that they would like to do something, that they're perhaps better holders of energy than they are activators or manipulators of energy and so on. They think that people won't support them. And yet my experience is you just leave and they're there. It's a stunning thing that happens. Some years back, I used to use a very nice Icelandic film, and it showed a lot of young people popping up from behind old boats up in the mountainsides, from behind glaciers and so on. And they all looked pretty desperate, basically. That was the intention of the video. And their intention was well manifest as they gradually came together and started as a trail up to the top of one of their higher mountains, which had a vertical face to it. Now, I have to say, they did not throw themselves off that mountaintop. That's really important. A clue to sensible energetics is that you don't do what you're not supposed to do. But a clue to true energy was shown in that video. It showed that they looked at one another and they realized they'd actually got to throw themselves into the ether to take the energy and just know that it was there. And it was. So there was this group flying. And I know there are many children's stories that encapsulate exactly that video. Just dare to do it, because it's a fascinating place to find out just how positive this amazing world is.
So along with that, what I want to talk about is doing and moving from the bottom to the top, because one of the things that I've learned before I started studying on the nature of incarceration and the abuse systems and these triangles that pull us down, for most of my life, I was always working at the peak potentials end, because that's what I learned. I learned to manage fear and have courage and take leadership as a young woman in the mountains of Eastern Washington. I grew up on a farm with no running water. I had to learn how to handle the bears and the deers and the horses and whatever I had, and men in the wilderness. You have to deal with all these different kinds of issues. And one of the biggest things you have to do is learn how to control your mind and the stories of fear that can easily come up and overtake you. So when I left and I went to college, I went to ROTC camp to see if I wanted to be, in the military to save the world and make change, because I had grown up looking at the conservation camps and realizing that we were damaging our ecosystem. And if you damage your food supply and your water supply, that's your life. So it was crazy to me that so many humans we were so busy destroying the planet in our chase for greed and money and power and cities and control. So I went to see where I could be of most use. So I went to Air Force ROTC for a semester and learned how to target shoot and became a sharpshooter. Went into, and I learned to drill. That was interesting. I could only do that so long. and then I went to politics, and I learned about politics, and I learned how the war between the Republicans and the Democrats, it was right during the Nixon and the Watergate era. It was huge conflict. And I went, you're never going to win fighting right, wrong, or I'm better than you. And there was no collaboration, and it drew me crazy. I mean, it blew me away. Went into education and went to college, and I started studying certain classes, and I went, you know what, these guys are so busy pontificating about all this intellectual stuff. None of them are getting down to the business. I got to go into business. I went in, I mean, there's long story short, I went through a few things, but in the end, I ended up walking into free enterprise, working with maverick people who were wanting to change the world. And I was working with free enterprise in community development platforms, and I started to build this skill set. So I was into performance. So to get away from me, at one point, by the time I was raising teenagers, I realized that our systems were off course and our kids were in trouble. What was I going to do? And I ended up running into a woman called Irene Morgan. And she was the founder of the Restorative Community Coalition. And I wasn't planning on going here very long, Ian, but I think it's useful because of the questions that are coming up on the chat to talk about looking at the misery. And I'm going to share my screen. How do I share my screen? Here we go. While the other participant is sharing, you need to let me share. Okay. Share my screen. Number 2. I want to talk about this for just a minute, because the work that we had to do to address let me just start 1 minute of this.
The Restorative Community Coalition is in the business to reclaim lives. It is striking that the prison population in this country has increased. It has quadrupled since 1970.
I started the Restorative Community Coalition 7.5 years ago. When we started, we were the Reentry Coalition, and we were the first in the state.
So what she's going to go on and talk about is how we had to tackle the law enforcement mass incarceration industry. And I don't want to go down into the weeds, but I also want to notice that here I came into this world going, what are we going to do about it? And how are we going to change it? And how are we going to tackle it? And when I first realized this cellular betrayal that I'm talking about, it made me angry to feel so betrayed. And we started out looking at all these different things that were happening in the community. And in order to get past the anger and past the victimization and past the misery, I literally had to upgrade my own skill in being able to talk to professionals at different layers of the gradient scale. So I talked to business people. I talked to a prison guard who was able to speak at one of these things. I went and talked to the accountants who could actually analyze what was going on in the budgets and what was going to happen in the county. I went to a history professor. He was an abolitionist. I went to talk to these jail and justice reforms to attorneys who were working on change. I went to talk to the civic leaders about how we were being snookered by all these things. So it was through the process of gradient learning, I had to step up my own game to the point where yesterday, yeah, I got angry. But I'll tell you what I did with that anger. You can go back and look at it. My anger went from being at humans and at people to how do I change it into being productive so we can focus on what we need for the future. So you can talk about all the different marginalized people, but if you're going there with sadness and misery instead of hope and leadership and potential, we're not going to pull ourselves up. So it was very hard to get money in the beginning. Today, we just started bringing in money because we've built a model for restorative justice that's huge. So I wasn't planning on going there, Ian, but I thought that might be useful to help people understand the difference between working at one layer of the game and moving it up over time. And look at, I got invited here by Jim. I never anticipated that. When I started fighting with the sheriff, who the heck ever expected to be up here? And I'm here.
I think I've got some answers to this, Joy.
Good.
One of the most amazing things that I describe when I say you just leap and you'll get the support, it's a fantastic opportunity that we have to slingshot. Now, slingshot is just a system that says there's energy out there. Slingshots are used to get spacecraft way off into incredible speeds into the universe. You would typically aim a rocket towards the sun, but not intending to hit it. The sun would use its gravity to speed up the rocket. It would swing around the back and fly off into the universe at much greater speed, huge amount more energy. Now, that slingshot model works so brilliantly with intentional change. The areas that I would use as examples, one cannot now hold a company, registered company in the UK without having 4 bottom lines on your balance sheet. So you have to have an ecological balance sheet, you have to have a social balance sheet, you have to have a workers balance sheet, and you can then, if you wish, have a financial balance sheet.
So that's beyond the triple bottom line. What do you call that?
Oh yeah, it's quadruple bottom line. We've had it
Awesome.
in law for areas. You know, the nice thing about it is that those organizations that have properly adopted it are winning all hands down in their profitability. You know,
Absolutely.
we told them so. Another area that I think is brilliant in its way, I feel so sad for your tendency to think that incarceration is a solution to crime. You know, we know, and it's well proven, it is simply not. All it does is more creates more. So we've got 3 areas that we slingshot there. We just crawled all over our prison system with an education system. That was too obvious for words. Then we crawled all over our what we call heavy end young people, tends to be young people, unfortunately. We stopped them getting started, basically. And what we make sure of is that our young people are helped to experience possibility in their very early years. I mean, we're a way off anything like total success, but we have got areas that have got 0 prison sentences over years now. We just don't do it. And of course, we do the restorative justice. We make sure that the perpetrator meets the victim, and that, of course, the perpetrators don't hang on to anything that they've gained from the crime environment. So, you know, we've got some good, strong stuff there. But again, it's slingshot. We've got a great guy. How come I know these people? Lord Ramsbotham. Now, this is just how you do it. I was searching for something interesting. I'll show you this just in case it works out. It could do. But here is another screen share. Lord Ramsbotham, he was head of our prisons, and he did all this for us. He just happens to now be a key person on the Summer Camps Trust, because the Summer Camps has got a major agenda of stopping our young children coming into touch with crime and needing to get them their excitement from that. Again, another guy, sadly lost to us now, Professor Heinz. He was a real character in his day, but I got him to speak to Parliament, and he was quite clear. He handed out his sheets in the shock of crazy hair that he walks around in, and on his sheet was a statement: "A risk in time saves crime."
Wow, what an awesome quote.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
I'll
a
tell you
risk
what,
in
Ian,
time saves
Ian, I'm
crime.
not sure we're seeing what you're seeing.
Oh, have you
Like-
got the elders on here?
Yeah.
Okay. I was wanting to come back to that because the slingshot that I'm using for global developments now involves the elders. Now, you mentioned about the elders, Joy. What's important about elders is that they are the holders of so much of our wisdom. I certainly would not suggest that our young people have not got wisdom. I am absolutely saying that everybody has got wisdom.
Mhm.
And that's really important. Wisdom is universal. You've just got to use 2 ears and 1 mouth. What's important about this is that if we look here, the founder, of course, not surprisingly, Nelson Mandela, and here Mary Robinson, first woman president of Ireland, first woman prime minister of Norway, first education minister of Mozambique, Ban Ki-moon, Hussein. I mean, the elders is a group of people that stand, as Eleanor Roosevelt did, as an elder amongst humanity, and they will support anything that is going on that they really do feel strongly about. And at the minute, to my great happiness is today they put a message about values and ethics, and there you'll see Jimmy Carter in there, Kofi Annan, Desmond Tutu, Ellie Blatt. I mean, what can you say? They are a stunning group of people that stand as elders, and every society needs to go to its elders. And if it can't go to its elders, it should find out how it can create and deliver elders, and then it should introduce them to their youth in the same area and bring all of that energy into the future that they desire.
I just had an idea, and I don't know where this is going to go, but I didn't realize. I mean, we were so focused on dealing with the jail problem here. Our ability to go out and tap into people who weren't even recognized in our community. We tried to bring all kinds of knowledge in here, but when people are working in a closed mind, it was really hard to do it. But now we've won a couple of anti-sales tax initiatives, and we've moved to a different place, and we're actually hurting in a different way because we've had a homeless camp, and we've had police uprisings, and we've had homeless now on the west coast of the United States being hazed by the police. And they're, it's like genocide. It's a middle to lower class genocide, moving people into these poverty situations. And it's actually being caused by the very thing that we say we don't want to be doing. So it's that focus on, you don't want to do this, but you keep doing it. So instead, learning how to focus on the alternative. Here's my idea, Ian. Wouldn't it be a gas if we could host another conference call with people who are dealing with all these different kinds of incarceration and poverty issues and criminalization and misery conversations, who are working in the streets trying to fix it, to bring some of these people who are elders who have actually made these changes in different places in the world. And let's have a mastermind on that subject and say, okay, how did you move from here to here to here? What did that look like? And what could it look like now when we have this extremely polarized police versus people war game happening in the United States that's being perpetrated right now? Let's be in the now, talking about what can we do, harnessing the knowledge and the wisdom and the hurt and the trauma and all this stuff. It's critical action. Why not do it?
Yeah. I totally agree, Joy. But I would say the best way to influence, again, it's another strategy, the same as the slingshot, bringing in great energy to
Yes.
accelerate. It's to actually bring great examples to
Yes.
the fore. And I would totally support maybe half a dozen people talking about alternatives that have worked.
Awesome.
It's really, really hard to ignore success.
I totally agree. And it's the only way we're going to pull it out. And being able to harness our fear of looking at the fact that it might mean changing our economy. And that's a good thing.
You know, there are so many models of change, but a couple that I really like. One is where the groove that existing society is in gets so destabilized that you've got all the marbles running around in circles looking for another groove to fall into. And then if you offer them one, they'll take it. That is a typical model of change.
Yes.
I call it the saucer model. But another one that's just as good, you know, you can use them together as well. The tipping point, which makes something unstable, happens in two ways. One is the bad things rise so much that it becomes unstable. And then the good things are offered, which are so attractive that it has to be leapt at. Again, those are just two. There are so many more.
So you use the slingshot thing. I'd like to use the catapult. Like one of our guys in one of the chat rooms, he was talking to me about investments and how people put money into different things. And I didn't realize that the word actually has to do with the investments that were around castle walls and stuff. I mean, I don't even know all the stuff you know about that, but just the construct to realize that investments in our money world, oftentimes we're investing in things because we think we should get a better result. I mean, a better return on a money, instead of thinking about what is the real return to the community. So I'm so happy to know that you've got this quadruple bottom line. You know what? I've been asking people in my community how we were going to do that because I didn't know how to do it. And not one of my leaders knew that that even really existed. All of them know about the triple bottom line, but they don't understand this other level. So bringing these resources and people who are doing the right thing or good things are critically important.
You know, again, this is, you know, typical of change development, change management, making change happen, intentional change. That's all it is.
That's it.
The point about it, though, if you look at the typical commercial organization, it lives in fear.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Total fear. And the worst sort of fear, of course, is collective fear. Now, there's collective fear in an organization at many levels. The board level, can we push the money up to the shareholders in adequate quantities? There's shareholders. How are my pensions doing? Will they reach enough? The workers level, will there still be work for me tomorrow, next week, next year? And the family level, where will mum or dad have a job in the future? That level of fear is terrific. But if you can show success through an alternative route, and this to me is so important, it's showing happy, healthy success. Now, for all that COVID has been a terrible, terrible thing, it is beginning to show that other routes to some form of success is required. If we can go to that place where we're exhibiting success on lots of different levels, we can show, for instance, that commuting is not as sensible as we all thought it was. A family loses a parent for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. What a terrible cross to bear for that individual. Yep. So, you know, that's a simple example. Another example is that people are actually as productive, if not more productive, at home. Another example is that actually for less time, you can earn more money. I mean, it just goes on. but we have to share the successes. What we shouldn't do is just drop back into that old groove. And of course, that's the nature of a progressive society. It makes a plan, it does it, but what it doesn't do as well as it should do is review its plan and its successes. Because if it did, it would take what it had reviewed and develop a second plan, and therefore move in a wonderful circle into the future. It doesn't
Absolutely.
do that. We don't move into the future. Society has got such inertia.
The inertia that I've run into over and over again is exactly what is at the root of why I've developed these intentional change models.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've learned is that if you can educate without fear, I mean, it took a long time to figure out how to go talk to business people in the community to be able to step outside of their habit pattern to talk about incarceration. Nobody wants to talk about that here. I mean, they didn't want to talk about it. I would go to judges and I'd be talking to him. One of them was a great friend of mine. We race autocross, and he's a great competitor. We played racquetball against each other, and he was a great competitor. And what he told me straight up, he said, you know what you're doing is absolutely valiant. It's excellent. It needs to be done. And I completely agree with all the things you're talking about, and I can't step out of line. And I went, wow. And I said, so how am I going to get out of here? And he said, I can't step out of line. I've got rules and ethics and this and that and political issues and all this other stuff. So I started analyzing all the stuff that stops people from stepping in, from risking and stepping in the next layer. And I had to do that 30, 40 times across the stratosphere to get up to the point where I went, there's nothing. I can't ask any of these people. I get it. They're at high risk and they can lose a lot. So I ran for county executive. And I went, okay, I can't risk, but I can challenge the heck out of these dudes in public in a legal place. And I forced the conversation. Now, some people would say that's bullheaded. And yeah, it is, because you know what? That bull of the woods needed to be fronted. So I did it. And what that did is that opened up this whole other thing. And then I had to roll up and roll up and roll up. And it takes courage, and it's not easy. But I'll tell you what, the better you get at it, the better you get at it, and the more fun it is. And it does become adventurous. And we are at a tipping point in America and in this world right now where courageous leaders, we want to move people into leadership. We want to showcase that. We want to demonstrate for our young people. Someone was just talking about how Greta Thunberg isn't very happy with some of our leaders. Well, you know what? The leaders of the past, maybe they need to be sidelined, and we need new leaders to step forward and highlight and move it up and up and up. And that's where we're going. So Kurt just came on. I don't know if he's on the actual screen, but Ian, I think it's time to move us into having Kurt and Jim join us on the call and give us some feedback for where we're at so far. I think we've come to a place, but Ian, before we go to have them tackle us, why don't you close with whatever you want to say that wasn't completed so far on this call?
How about this? Let's see what happens with this little video.
Okay. Is there supposed to be sound? Okay. Wow.
How do you like that?
I loved it. When I was in Hawaii, the day the tsunami hit, I got to go out and swim with the whales and the dolphins in the aftermath and the sea turtles doing cleanup. And it was really interesting for me to notice the difference between the detritus that was natural human detritus, natural detritus, and the human detritus. And the difference was glaringly obvious. So taking care of our waterways, rebuilding our earth, revitalizing our nation and our worlds and our bodies and everything is absolutely crucial. And your focus with the World Citation Institute just inspires the heck out of me. Thank you. So,
that the degree of truth in that is unbelievable. How can anyone do anything that damages that environment? Any environment. It is staggering.
yeah. And we can correct it. So Jim, welcome back. You're on mute at the moment, but Kurt, welcome back also. Kurt was one of our speakers on the opening day, and he's also involved with Peace Labs. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Jim, and you help us close up the last 15, 20 minutes here.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Ian and Kurt. Wonderful that you could join us. I would want to just get your comment, Ian, as we go for closure here, and then obviously hear from Kurt and Joy as well about something that was coming to my mind as you were talking about the power and necessity of intention. And the one thing that I would add, which I think is both consistent with the data and keeps my emotions on a positive orientation, is that, as Joe Dispenza says, the key is to match clear intention with elevated emotions.
Oh, cool.
And in fact, as you're intending something, if you intend something with an emotion of concern and fear, the intention isn't really activated. That it's only when we set an intention and accompany it with the sense of gratitude and abundance and happiness, as if the intention has been fulfilled, that we actually empower the intention to its fullest extent. And while you were talking, that was just emerging in my mind, and it wasn't kind of explicit in what you were saying. I'm sure you agree with that, but I would just love to hear your comment on this relationship between intention and emotion. And I ask this because, in a world that's increasingly full of stress, keeping positive emotional attitude and disposition of being is probably as important as any other thing that we can do to maintain our kind of, I would say, our psycho-emotional equilibrium. So just would love your comment. And I know, Kurt, you have a lot to say about that. And Joy, we just wanted to bring it in.
Thank you so much. This is such a good lead-in for this, the power really of intention. And there may be fear. Imagine so many people had to experience Apollo 13. Apollo 13, what happened on it? There was an emergency that messed up the ship. It wasn't going to be able to do what it was supposed to do, and it was out of whack.
We got a problem, Houston.
Yes. And did people say, we can't do this? It's too, this is going to happen and that's going to happen too fast? No. We set our intention. Right now, we're at that sort of crisis point in the planet. And I don't look at crisis. I look at solutions. This is one of the things we get to do, is look always just at solutions for what we want rather than what we don't want. When we allow focus to get distracted, what happens? The dark force takes over, so to speak, and we're not letting any of that kind of force distract us from creating a perfect society. Now, some people think nothing can be perfect, But one of the world scriptures actually says, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. If it was said in, quote, scripture, it must be so. And if it isn't so, let's make it so. We're the creators of our reality. If I look on the light side, I feel better. I'm healthier. If I look on the dark side, oh, that's why so many people are getting sick and killing themselves and so on in our society. All they see on TV is all the negative, and they just get inundated with it instead of being freed of it. And that's why I've spread meditation around since the 1970s, because it clears the fears, it clears the doubts, it clears they say muhis in Africa. There's all kinds of words for it. But what good does those things do? So we use a cosmic cleanser with meditation, and it opens us up to the force that is love. And we get to experience that, and there will be peace in everything, and everything with peace when we focus on that. And I so appreciate being able to be with you guys. Joy, you were gonna.
I actually want Ian to go there because Ian's got a different take, and and I think the significance of this 3 days is to move us into action, and action means something a little different for each one of us. Ian, go for your action piece.
I might just have a little adventure myself here. I'll step away from action just for a paragraph or two. Developmental psychology has been in many ways skewed. It used to be a really esoteric environment of huge achievement and potential for humanity, and now it's probably a child development area more than anything else. But it did say many things, and one of the nicer things that it said was moving into the area of the concept of competence. Now, again, I'm lucky enough to have a few years under the belt, so I can always refer back a little bit unashamedly. There used to be a thing about driving the economic world with psychology. Everyone knew how to sell something because you did this or that, or drive a motivate a workforce because you did this or that. And of course, always underwritten by some sort of probably small scale, not always, experimentation. So the concept of competence arose. Now, I actually believe that there was a working out that if people could be, I don't know, attracted to a new area, it would sell very easily because humans were actually attracted to taking on something a little bit more complex. Now, at its least, it's boiled down to something like it's greener over the hill, it's better on the other side, it's stuff like that. So that's almost just travel to a different area and it's better. But it also translates into, oh, if I get one of those, it'll be better. Or if I can do that, it's better. Or that sort of competence. And if we add all of those attractions in our modern society together, we end up with an overfilled life. We've actually got an attraction in our psyche to an overfilled life. Now, if I was to, I won't say for a day, because I happen to know that changing an education system takes more than a day. But if I was lucky enough to be able to change an education system, I would have as one of the main subjects, keeping one's life simple. And that's my answer to your question, Jim. I really do think that if we can just keep our intentionality to a level of achievement which is satisfactory for anyone, some people need busy, some people need less busy, and so on, we will have the answer that we need. And we shouldn't be demanding the wrong things of other people. we should be saying it's your choice and empowering them to know what their right place is.
Good point. Joy, is there anything you want to add?
Absolutely. My adding takes me back to this page, this single diagram. This is what I built for my sons and a bunch of their buddies and for the parents and anybody else. And it has helped me to diagram through all the stress that we're dealing with since 2007 when I built this model. And the point is that fear is infectious. And it's infectious in our own bodies. When we start the cascading of those neuropeptides that go down into the bottom and shut us down, we get more and more constricted and more fearful, and we make more mistakes. And you can say this to any athlete out there. If you're entering a performance and you're afraid, you're probably going to get hurt. And that's just a biochemistry of the body. If you can meditate beforehand, that's terrific. Get yourself into the right centered spot. That's great. But the only way that you're actually going to get into success is to put that meditation into moving action. And then you can achieve the next level of joy that you achieved it. And then you can build your way up. Our habit pattern in civilization has been to live into the less than rather than living into the greater than. And that's the whole point of these intentional change models that I've been working on. And it's exactly what Ian has been talking about. You live into, you take risks and you grow. It's a habit. I call it the joy muscle inside. What did you call it the other day? The courage muscle or something, Ian? Because it's building that skill to climb out. And that's the focus, is constantly looking to the future. Bring the heart and soul, bring the humanity in, but bring your happiness to the table, because happiness is infectious. So that's the key. Even under duress, stay on, which life am I going to save next? Which direction am I going to go next? What's the next best opportunity? Turning problems into opportunities, troubleshoot so that you can find solutions and move on them. That's what I'd like to say.
You know, there's so many simple happiness practices that are available. And if anybody wants to be able to send an email to me, I would be happy to send them a list of happiness habits as well as happiness links. And it gets to be able to see videos and other things like that, or instructional kind of information videos that allow people to be happier and happier. When we're happier, totally, we're more healthy, we're more successful, obviously less troublesome. Therefore, we're more peaceful. Simple little practices like smiling more or laughing every time you get in your car, you can just laugh for no good reason. And experiment with your laugh. Experiment with the machine gun laugh or the hee-haw laugh or whatever. We can become what we want to be: happier, healthier, and holier. Simple things.
And Ian, and on that line, what is the one takeaway that you'd like to ask people to do or invite them to do from your world? Or how do you want to close your presentation?
You know, I believe that we've been pretty clear about what it is we wanted to speak about. A model that helps people build the intention before they make the change that they then intend to make. So it's a kind of a circular thing. It's very easy to get down into the weeds because the examples are given. Not everyone needs to play around with summer camps or sort out the whales and dolphins, although I highly recommend it. It's a great activity. What I would say is don't hurry, don't worry, and don't forget to smell the roses. We have got so many things that we can build our lives with. I use something called karma yoga. I guess I could make a good joke about this. Karma yoga, it's normally referred to as working yoga. One can sit in a strange position and meditate. One can walk and meditate, lie down and meditate, whatever. Those of us that are familiar with meditation knows the common areas. But and this is the big but for me, you can also walk and meditate.
Yes.
You can also work and meditate. What you can't do is work badly and meditate. You can work really well and meditate, because meditation is about truly being in that moment and place, which is exactly what one needs when one does work. Now, I would say one of the futures for humanity is to realize that by not being in that place of now, we have built an economy on such imperfection, such unnecessary stuff, that we can't reuse it. It doesn't last very long, and nobody feels great about what they've done anyway, let alone own it. So an adjustment of the economy in the world of karma yoga, I absolutely love that I've cleaned a window really well. I love it when I form a letter so beautifully that it starts a great word. And I just know that if people had the time to spend on such a thing, then others would be willing to spend a little bit of money on it, which would begin that sharing of money. What comes around goes around, and the world would benefit. I know Life College has preached these sorts of things for a lot of years, but it continues to evolve. It continues to have new programs. I would love to flash up one from Indonesia, where the young people are now running the village. You know, why would they not? The older people have done it for so long and they've struggled. The younger people, new ideas, new opportunities. They're running a great village. It's almost zero energy attracting as well. But of course, yeah, it's quite warm out there too, so there's a slight advantage. But in Germany, the same thing. They've got a zero carbon village, and it's coming to a zero carbon town environment. All sorts of things. But part of it is this: we actually love doing what we do because we have time to get it right.
Yeah. So to close up real quick here, Jim, from my standpoint, one of the things I would invite people to do is come look at our Intentional Change Network. I'm going to share the screen just for a second. And I also put it in the chat. It's one of my passions to lead people in conscious change and to lead people in eldershiping and to lead people from the heart, so that we can intentionally change the future, change our destiny. We have choice right now, every one of us. And, you know, I can look at Ian and I can go, you know what, I got too much clutter in my life. I got to get rid of that. I get that. And I can beat myself up over it. Or I can say, oh, well, that stuff's just going to disappear shortly because I'm headed that way. And as I go that direction, that stuff will go away instead of beat myself up over what I'm not doing right. And I can look at Kurt and I can say, you know, he's always talking about peace and meditation. I meditate in action, like what Ian's talking about. I go deep and I meditate as I'm doing my research and I'm watching and I go to sleep. I can put my brain to work when I go to sleep. But intentionally changing is I'm holding the fact that our planet and us humans grew ourselves by intention anyway. We already know how to do this. Our cells know how to do it. Our biophysics know how to do it. Our scientists know that bioenergetics is living, it's working, it's alive. The woman who just spoke, Kala, I mean, my God, what she told me about the future, how absolutely thrilling is it that we are at this point in time, at this point in history, with the wellness of knowledge that we've got. You have brought forward so many amazing people, Jim. And these people have brought knowledge forward. Yes, let's all clap, because that's incredible what you've done. And now it's time to take another step forward, because COP26 is over. We know the mess we're in. So what? You know what? We can't fix what was. We can only fix where we're going. So if we can get in action, doing the things that you know how to do, I'd invite any person on here. Stan was really good. Stan at Chat Action Network, the guy, we do this Chat Action thing afterwards. He told me, Joy, he says, you can't do anything unless you ask people to do one thing at the end, take one action. I said, okay. And he said, and have them email it to you. So I would invite anybody who was inspired by this last 3 days, who can take one little tiny action in your world, in your life, email it to me at joythinks@gmail.com, or go on any of my websites and reply or whatever. And what we will do is we'll compile a whole bunch of these little 1% actions, these 1 degree actions, these 1 action actions, and we'll publish it. How cool is that? Now you'll start to see the ripple effects of people taking 1% action, 1 degree action, whatever, will move things. So thank you, Jim, for the opportunity. Thank you for allowing Ian and Paul McGee and Kurt and myself to step up. We got a bundle of more people who can step up and talk about action. It's up to you. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joy. Yes, absolutely. Let's deepen this dialogue in the new year. We originally, everyone, were going to do a 5-day program on intentional change, but the schedule got a little complicated and overfilled. So we only did 3 days, but we'll be returning in the new year with Joy and other panelists around this very important topic. I'd like to close with a comment that you just made, Ian, which I think is profound, and we should all just pause to take it in. Ian said, you can't work badly and meditate. Just pause and take that in, folks. You can't do something badly and meditate at the same time. There's a relationship between one's state of being and what Aristotle calls the pursuit of excellence. Mm-hmm. And I know, Kurt, you could do a whole lecture on it because you've done this even at the Olympic level, that our interior disposition of being is intimately related with our exterior manifestation in action. And so I think the closing comment that I would want to be making here is that when we're thinking about intentional change, it's sort of that fulcrum of will and disposition and action where our whole being comes together.
Yes.
And if we can somehow ensure that the frequency, the how of what we're doing is of such a level that the what that we do is raised in terms of its intentional effectiveness, we begin to have the possibility of the kind of transformation of ourselves and the larger collective that we're all searching for.
Next week, we have intentional interactions on the 8th.
Yeah, the 8th of December. Kurt's going to be doing a session on the 8th. So that'll be next Wednesday.
Yes, and it's interaction. So how we communicate with others. So thank you.
So anyway, this is a very rich mix, Joy, that it's a great witch's brew.
Positive witch, I'll tell you what. When you bring them all together, you never know what you're going to get.
And so I'm deeply grateful. And Ian, I love your wisdom. And Kurt, you're just such a beautiful human being. I just want to honor the presencing that you have brought to our deliberations, and look forward to your session next Wednesday.
And
okay.
Let's go to the after chat. Come talk to us.
Yeah, after chat is up next. You can see the link in the chat box, and we'll see everyone on Monday. Have a good weekend. And Monday we'll be back same time, same station. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.